Again. No, I've just put those petunias down, just standing all over the flower beds. Honestly, Village Attacks. So, Village Attacks from the Grimlord games. So I'll be honest, I didn't really know a massive amount about this game before going into it. I'd seen it was on Kickstarter, and I'd looked at it, and that was kind of the extent of my interest, well, knowledge at that point in time. I kind of presumed it was a dungeon crawl game, as it contained lots of minis and stuff, so I kind of thought it was that, but actually it's not. It's not really that. It is a tower defense game, and in fact, it reminds me a great deal of the game, if you remember, for the 80s, called Dungeon Keeper from Bullfrog, which saw you as a dungeon lord protecting your dungeon against the attacking heroes. It's quite topical, really, in its nature. Everyone is playing a minority, a villain minority of vampires and leeches and all sorts of other sort of succubi. This poor downtrodden minority of these monsters who just try to get along in the world, and the local villagers are up in arms, and they're invading our castle, smashing the walls down, with the sole intent of wiping us off the face of the earth, which is, you know, where's this tolerance we're looking for in this modern age? Obviously not here. So yeah, that's Village Attacks. So let's have a closer look at what's in this box. So the game itself, as I said, is kind of really straightforward. You have a set of scenarios in the rulebook that you set out a board for, and it may give you some specific rules, and it actually has a tutorial. So the first 5 missions kind of drip feed you in rules to eventually where you reach a point where you know everything you're doing. I'll skim through most of it. So on your turn, what do? Well, you roll your 6 dice and then you work out what you're going to do with them all. Now, at any point of this, if you roll 3 of a kind, then you can take them back up and you can re-roll. And you could continue doing that for every 3 of a kind until you reach a point where you lock in your dice as to what you're going to use. Once you've done that, what can you do with your dice? Well, you can use any dice other than the villager dice, which I will come to in a minute what the villager dice do. But any other dice you can do is you can lock in to one of your move points on your board to move. And when you do a move action, you literally move to an adjacent zone. That's it. One move is 1 space. You can do that up to 2 times on most boards, so you can lock dice in and do that. You could attack. There's 2 types of attack dice. There's a melee attack dice, which will attack any villagers or enemies in your zone you're in, or you can do a ranged attack, which will attack an adjacent zone. You can activate abilities. So, as I've said, you may well upgrade your abilities on your player board, which, as you upgrade those, they will give you more stuff to do. And again, you can lock dice into those squares there to do those abilities. And that's it. Other than that, you've got a magic die, which looks like an eye on it. You can use that, again, for unlocked abilities. Or in a castle heart, if you use it there, it will allow you to remove a damage from you, or in fact if you've got some sort of effect upon you, and there's lots of different things, status conditions that could come into play in the game, especially as you level up and add more of the rules to the game. The other 2 dice you've got there really you can use is defense die. Now there is a standard basic shield defense die which can be locked in your defense slot at the top of your board, and that does nothing at the moment, but on the villager's turn that will defend against 2 points of damage to you to stop you receiving that. Or the other thing you can do is lock in a retaliation die, which won't defend you against any damage, but it will retaliate with the same force by which you are hit. And that's it. The only other spaces on your board, and what you can do is you can lock 2 dice in, or depending on your board status, but you can lock dice into reserve for next turn. They're there ready with those facings, and you can then decide at that point, do you keep them or do you roll them with the rest of your dice? And that's pretty much what you do at the basic game with your character. Now I'll come into some of the extra additional rules in a minute, but that's pretty much what you're basically doing. Villager die. If you forgot, one of these is a villager die. When you roll one of these, one of the villagers will move from the furthest out towards the centre of the castle heart. Roll more than one, more villagers move. They're not very useful. They're generally a pain in the backside. Don't roll villager die. So then it's the villagers phase. What do the villagers do? Well, on their turn, they, starting from the nearest to the castle heart, they do 2 actions. The first action is always an attack, and then the second action is a move. So they will attack and then they will move on there. Now there is a hierarchy of attack. Nearly always they will go for the castle heart, and then it drops down from there for monsters in the zone and then monsters in adjacent zones, and that's how they attack. Now the villagers, the base villagers, all have 1 health and 1 attack. There is a difference to this, and this is added as the game goes on for the scenarios, is hunters. When hunters come into play, we have this little cloth bag here, and when we spawn hunters, we pull out this, pull a chit out, and that will be preloaded with the monsters that we as the players are playing, and when their colour comes up, the subsequent colour is attached to the bottom of the base. What that basically means is those hunters are tuned to one specific type of monsters. They may be vampire hunters, or they may be succubi hunters. What it basically means is they will attack those monsters first as a priority, and they do more damage to them when they do that. So you kind of have to watch out for that shenanigans going on. That's just another wrinkle to what you're up against, what's going on, a bit more of a tactic, a bit more of a strategy. At the end of the villagers phase, the last thing we do is we spawn new villagers to the spawn points on the map. We pull a card for that, and that will tell us what villagers are spawning and how many of them. And there's tiers on this, which escalates as you kill more of the villagers when they attack. And I'll go into that in a minute with all the additional rules that come into play. And that's it. We spawn the villagers, they're out, and then we start afresh, rinse, repeat. That's the game. Okay, so that's the basic rules of the game. That's how it more or less plays every time. However, there is a few other bits that are added throughout the campaign, especially this first 5 missions. It adds these additional rules until you get to the full game. So one of the things you get added into it is this board here, which tracks some stats. It tracks our castle heart health, which is very lovely. Villager morale, that's usually preset at the start of the game along with the castle heart health. Every villager you kill decreases this down. What this will do is, depending on the scenario you're playing, there will be preset tiers, the level ups of the villagers, which are on the villager spawn cards. The tiers will jump up depending where the morale is on the game. And then there's a village event, which this is increased by the number of players every round. And again, for this scenario, there will be set numbers of when this hits, and it will cause a village event card to be turned. Now these cards have all sorts of things on them. They will usually be bad news. They will either cause the villagers to have an extra move, maybe spawn more on the board, give them abilities, shut off areas on the map, change the abilities of areas of the map, does all that sort of stuff. So that's quite a problem on there. There also will be, later on at the point on the board, is you'll get a traps, which you can buy. They will be spawning on the base board here, usually end up about 3 of them at a time, and they can be a dice spent on them, and they can be put onto the board. These are useful for us as the bad guys to do. So you spend the dice symbol at the top of the card, and then it will tell you what rooms they can go into, who it affects, and normally these will be either stopping the flow of enemies, attacking them, crowd control, all sorts of things like this. All useful, helpful things for the monsters. Then they're a great addition. They give you something else to do with your die on your turn. The only one additional thing that's added into it is the town heroes. These are sort of randomized again. They're spawned by certain cards will spawn them, and what they are is tougher, harder versions of the villagers. They usually have a health status, how much movement they do, how much damage they do, if they've got any range, and usually a special ability, usually related to attacking one specific type of monster. They're generally bad news when they spawn. They have their own miniature when they come on the board, some cool miniatures like their Gravedigger and stuff like this, and they're a problem. They're generally a problem, and that's pretty much all the rules on how villager attack works. So what else we got? We do have this shiny coin. So what's that for? Well, number one, is used for tracking the first player counter. Whoever's the first player will have the coin. But it also has another terribly important thing. It's a decision coin. Yes, it will be used for making our decisions. Whenever the point we have to spawn villagers, they're usually going to be coming in for more than 1 point. We assign a head or tails to them, flick the old coin and decide what zone they're coming in. This is also done for generational movement of the villagers. If there's a choice to be made, flip the coin. In fact, the coin gets flipped an awful lot. There'll be lots of coin flipping and dice rolling in this game. So that's Village Attacks, that's how it plays. So, one thing is abundantly clear from obviously doing it, it's a game very much of chance, much randomness between the dice rolling and the coin flipping there, and the randomness of the card draws, and the randomness of the town hero draws, and just generally everything. There's a whole lot of random going on here. So any fans, any people who have wanted Euro players especially, anyone who's looking for sort of some procedurally generated or control of a game, this is not it. This is chaos maths in full flow.
Still not clear on chaos.
It simply deals with predictability in complex systems. The shorthand is the butterfly effect. A butterfly can flap its wings in Peking, and in Central Park you get rain instead of sunshine.
Why?
Now, put your hand flat like a hieroglyphic. Then. Now, let's say a drop of water falls in your hand. Which way is the drop going to roll off? Over which finger or over the thumb?
Thumb.
Now, some people may view that as a good or bad thing. It is very much in the realms of beer and pretzels. And in fact, my initial thoughts of the game were it's going to be a much deeper, complex game, just because, that was my presumption on it, but actually it's not. It's quite a light game. As I said, I've run through the basic rules. What it essentially comes down to is you rolling your dice and then taking actions, and it can play through very quickly. Most of the scenarios are about 40 to 60 minutes in length. Even with a full player count, it whizzes along at a fair cracking pace. So anyone looking for fast and loose gameplay, this is certainly going to be in your wheelhouse. So what about the rest of it? What's in the box? What else is good? The component quality is top drawer, so you're getting absolutely top of the range bling in your box. The Town Heroes figures are really cool looking things, and the monsters themselves, the hero monsters, they're all really good. Everything is easily comparable to market leaders like FFG or Cool Mini or Knott's product. So if you're a fan of that sort of stuff, you're getting your money's worth in there. And whether you're coming to it from a Kickstarter backer or picking it up off the shelf in your local retail store, you're still getting comparable levels of really good stuff. Yeah, it plays wonderfully. If you're looking for a tower defense game with something with a bit more meat to it, and just, that game you can get to the table with a bit of dice rolling and a bit of fun, then this is what this game is. It is that. And the theme, we can't knock the theme. The theme is, I really like the theme, the idea that you're the bad guys and you're trying to defend yourself against the villagers. It's a new theme. We've not seen anything like it, and it's kind of cool and it works. And I dig it. It's good stuff. So, is there anything that we don't like? Well, if I've got to come to a couple of caveats of stuff that really, over dice. I would love more dice in this game. There's just not nearly enough dice in this box. You get 6 dice, which is cool, and this is the same and comparable for any dice game. There's never enough dice. But when you're reserving dice on your player board, you exchange them out for cardboard tokens. And more than once, we just forgot that we'd reserved the dice. So then we were re-rolling and then going, I reserved that dice. It's a small thing, but it's a little bit of an annoyance. I would have loved more dice in this box. If you were a Kickstarter backer, you could have paid extra for some extra dice, and I'm sure more dice will be available once this comes properly out to retail. But yeah, if we have one thing I had to go up, I want more dice in my game. Other than that, really, it's pretty good stuff. I could have done with a bit more feeling of a level up when we level up our heroes, the monsters. There is abilities you level to, and some of them are quite powerful and cool, but none of it has that wow factor, that real sort of ding, I've just got this new ability and it's very cool. There's some good stuff in there, but yeah, it just feels a little bit underwhelming at some points where you kind of XP up and then you get that thing. It doesn't feel as rewarding as I want it to be in some cases. But, that's a small thing. I mean, if you're a fan of tower defense games and are looking for a tower defense game, there's not a massive amount of them on the market. And this does it very well. It's easy to teach, it plays very fast, it's got lots of cool stuff in the box, and there's lots of expansion possibilities for the game as well. So I can see where they can go with more stuff for the game. And so yeah, Village Attacks, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Really good stuff. Villagers. 1 moment. So yeah, Village Attacks. We enjoyed that a lot. Lots of big miniature stuff in there, lots of good component quality, lots of dice chucking. If you're looking for a tower defense game, then, you know, this is one of the top draw efforts out there at the minute. Really good stuff. So yeah, we'll give it a recommendation. We'll give it a thumbs up. If you're looking for that beer and pretzels evening game of some deranged villager murdering and monster protecting, you can't go much further wrong than this. Now, you excuse me, but I've got a problem with the neighbours, so I'm going to have to go and deal with that. Bastards.